Welcome to this special edition of Life Changes with Filippo. I am Filippo Voltaggio, and we're here in Shadow Hills, California, at this beautiful sanctuary called Bushwillows. And then I am with a very special person by the name of Sheldan Nidle, who is sharing some very interesting information with us today that I can't wait to get into. So we're going to start right away. Sheldan, let's start by saying hello. Now, you know how to say hello in languages that are not used on Earth right now, so give us a couple examples of saying hello in different languages.
Well, for instance, the one I'm more used to, of course, is the Syrian, which is just Selamat Ja, which simply means be in joy, because being fully conscious, they are totally in joy all the time, and so their greatest possible way of explaining anything to anybody when you're being greeted is, of course, to say that. And the Hercularians, which are very similar to the Syrians, they just say Selamat Ja, which is almost the same. But that's because they basically are an offshoot of the Syrians. They were one of the original colonies that were founded only by the Syrians, Sirius B star nation. And so their language is very similar. And so as you go through different groups, you discover that everything really goes back to the Lyran peoples and, of course, to the Vegans, where we all originally came from.
So you might be getting the idea that we're talking about people that are presently either not on this planet or did not originate here, and we're talking about extraterrestrials, pretty much.
Right.
And other universes. And the interesting thing is here, the reason we're talking to Sheldan is because he's been contacted by other alien beings. They would be alien to us, but to them they kind of know each other.
They know each other quite well, yeah.
So he's teaching us how to say hello in these different alien languages. Now, I asked Sheldan if he spoke any of them, and he says that he only spoke one. And you got it how?
I just get it, and whenever I have to do something, I get it downloaded for me by the group that basically is a Syrian group that follows my mission and takes care of me. So they give me any kind of information. Like when I do the update, it's the only time I have the whole group, the whole kind of gamut of people, because then I have this committee of 20 of them. It's kind of interesting. Until you've had 20 people talking in your head, you've not really experienced life, I think.
At the same time?
At the same time.
Well, I'm Italian-American, and I've had 20 people talking at me at the same time, but not in my head, unfortunately. Well, the interesting thing is that, talk about using our brain, or our brain being a computer. That's what Sheldan Nidle is saying right now, is that just like a computer, he had the information downloaded, and all of a sudden he could speak the language like you could just plug it into your computer. So that's the download information is exactly what we're here to get. So let's start from the beginning. We know how to say hello.
Right.
Now that we've done all the pleasantries, you were just a happy person living a happy life, and all of a sudden something happened to you one day, and you became, not that you're not a happy person now, but I mean, you became who you are now.
Well,
what happened?
It started when I was a little kid.
Oh, really?
As a matter of fact, my sister says that, along with me, that basically in her mind, we were really raised by the Syrians. Our parents were kind of weird people. They were, let's always say, ultimate dysfunctionality. And so the result of all of that was we really got most of our teaching in life from the Syrians. And the result of all of that is I'm not too well acclimated to planet Earth.
Okay. So you don't know our ways too well. But you speak our language very well.
Yes.
Okay, so are you saying that these beings were actually present in your life as a child?
I spent most of my life up in the ships. And
up in the ships?
When I was a kid, yes.
Okay, so you're walking around living a normal life, and all of a sudden you're beamed up, or how does that happen?
We had a routine. What it was, when I got home, or if I had an off day, I wasn't going to school, I'd just lay in my bed, and 2 minutes later I was there.
In the ship?
In the ship.
Okay. And this was not strange to you?
No.
Because you were a child and...
It was normal. It was normal. Matter of fact, my mother and father were kind of freaked out by the whole thing, to use modern terminology. My dad did it by trying to beat me up all the time. My mother was confused. Finally, when I was about 12 years old, what happened was I was walking downstairs going to have breakfast, and she was in the kitchen at the table, and she said, "Sit down here." And I said, "Why?" She said, "I want to know what planet you're really from."
Really? Interesting.
Because they had been fighting it, you know. I would go up and there'd be this big flash of blue light. And I was a kid when I was young, I could do things like turn lights on and off by just laying in bed or open or close doors. I was telepathic. I could put my mind in anybody's head. As a matter of fact, when I was about, what was it, about 13, I felt sorry for a guy who was a close friend of mine. And so what I did was I simply decided to use my talent to basically put in his brain, let's say, all the information. And so because there were two papers that were exactly almost alike, they accused me, of course, of cheating. And finally, my mother said to the teacher, after they had suspended me for this, at about the third day, said, "Where was he sitting?" And they said, "He was sitting in the far back of the room." And where was this other person? In the front row on the other side of the room. So he said, how could they cheat? Did they have a signal system? And so finally, after 2 more days of this, I got put back in school.
Of course, your mother couldn't tell him the truth because that sounds stranger than getting the information through signals. Okay, so I'm very curious about all this. This is fascinating. I'm sure you all are too. So you would be beamed up to the ship. Would your body still be, like if your mother walked into the room, would your body still be in bed?
No, that was physical.
You were physically gone?
Yeah.
Did your mother come in and not find you?
Yes, that was one of the reasons when I was younger that she knew I wasn't from here.
Because you would appear and disappear. Okay. Do you still visit the ship?
They set up a system now using special devices that are implanted around me and in my head that allow me to basically have a 3D television. So whenever I want to, or whenever they want to, they just come on.
In your head?
In my head. So I'm like having a television program going on, and everybody's... Colleen, my maid over here, can tell you that I'll be riding along with her, and all of a sudden I'm just laughing and all that stuff, and she's wondering what's going on.
They're showing you something, or
they're
telling you a
or they're
joke.
They're talking, yeah.
Okay. Well, if that happens during the interview, we should have a signal of you letting me know. Because, all right, so why you?
I asked them that question quite a few times because when I was a kid, I was super introverted, even worse than I am now. And I totally had trouble speaking properly because I tended to stutter because school to me was not nice. I was very smart, but the teachers wanted things in a certain way. Like the first grade, I had a Polish teacher whose entire family had been wiped out by the Germans. I had a very thick German accent, and I spoke kind of like a broken English. So her big thing was whenever I said anything in German, she would tell me to put my hand out, and she would take this big ruler and hit me over the knuckles. My mother did not like this, of course. I came back telling her all the time because I'd have these sore hands. And so I had an uncle who was a lawyer, and so the two of them went to the school board, and they made an agreement because I was flunking something fierce because I was just totally confused by all this, and I refused to cooperate. And my mother was wondering because when I was in the first grade, I was already reading high school and college texts.
Wow. And do you think that came from being able to communicate?
Right, and also my mother really should have been a mathematics professor. There was an award in Buffalo called the Jesse Ketchum Award, and she won it 2 years in a row, which is a full scholarship to the University of Buffalo. And she refused because it was a depression, and so as a result, she stayed there because she was the one keeping the books.
Interesting. So, all right, so they gave you all this information. They've chosen you. You have no idea why, but they've chosen you to do what exactly with this information?
They said to spread it out, to tell people about what's going on in terms of our planet, in terms of contact, in terms of our change in consciousness, and what that all means. And so as a result of that, I said, wow, I got to do all this stuff? Well, of course, they gave me tons of information when I was a kid. I mean, I got all kinds of information in my head. I have stuff on history from this planet, history from other planets. I have all kinds of information with science, etc. So one of the things that I have done since I've been a kid was collecting information, both in libraries and what they gave me.
You're talking about the changes, and you're talking about this volcanic eruption in Iceland,
right,
which is causing a major havoc in Europe because of the airplane situation, and our modern civilization has never experienced something like that. and it's changing the way people have to think about business and flight and all that kind of thing. You're saying we're going to have that kind of a shift, or even more dramatic, with our monetary system too.
Right.
What kind of shift are you talking about?
Well, we're close to a shift in our banking system shifting from the fiat currency that we now have, which is, I like to call it floating in air value currency, to actual real value currency, which is a change then from fiat to gold-based currency.
We were on the gold-based system supposedly before.
Right, right. It was a partial one. What we need now to do is do a global base, because we have to realize modern banking has caused a shift from hard money, meaning money that you have in your pocket, or money that, or change you have in your purse or whatever, to credit cards and computer-oriented concepts of balances, etc., so that money really becomes nothing more than an electronic blip, really, changing around, and people will feel the blip in terms of the value or the accreditation that these changes have to their income or amounts in whatever thing they're doing, whether it be an account in some account that deals with the stock market or bonds, or some market thing that causes things to go up and down, that changes certain other rates in banks. So the process is all electronic. Even the trunching of commodities as money thing is all done with basically people pressing buttons in different cities around the planet, mainly in London and a few other places. But what we have to understand is all that has to change. We have to move back to a banking system that's real and local, and we have to move to a banking system that's regulated, and we have to move to a banking system that has real value. And that basically is part of this change. We have to change our reality from where we are right now, which is on the brink of an incredible disaster, to one where we move from this disaster, go over it and don't have to go through this monster, and reach a point where we are actually affluent. Because there's enough gold on this planet to actually change the nature of how the distribution of money is throughout the planet. So what we're seeing right now is a change, not only in our financial systems, right now you'd say it's shifting. Very shortly we'll be seeing all this. We're going to see a change in how government operates. We're going to see a change in consciousness, which we're noticing. This entire society is in the process of a major shift in its reality, because we're moving to a reality which allows for extraterrestrials to be a part of the whole system. Right now, extraterrestrials at the most are an afterthought to the average person right now, like a quiz question. But it's not to be a quiz question anymore, it's to be a reality.
So, do the extraterrestrials actually want to be participating with us daily on the planet, or we just need to acknowledge that they're here, or we need to communicate with them somehow? What is the end goal here with the interaction with them?
The end goal is what they've had me call first contact, which is a massive first contact with the people of planet Earth. So what you will be having is meetings with these particular beings, all the beings that we're going to initially meet.
I feel like I'm having one right now, to be honest.
All the beings want us to be able to do like we're doing right now, talk to one another, and be able to exchange information. Because a lot of people are very frustrated over the times between when the first contacts were supposed to originally happen to the times when they will actually happen. So basically the process is that they need to have us shift from seeing this as something that's totally awesome in the direction of, oh my God, this is happening, to an everyday event. And that's where they want to move us to, because they have another task besides just getting to know one another and reestablishing the fact that they're our space family and reconnecting with it. What we also need to do is understand is we have to move from being where we are right now, which is on the edge of a massive change in consciousness, to being fully conscious. Fully conscious is simply when you combine your abilities as a spiritual being and your abilities as a physical being, and basically you might say you can join both of those. And you become a being walking in both worlds, to use a phrase that other people have used. What we just then have to realize is that when you're in this reality, it's kind of like being in a dreamland. You no longer are in a world of sequential time. You're in a world of non-sequential time. You move from, you might call, an ordered randomness, just as people have discovered as they look at fractals and other basic mathematical objects. As you move from lower levels, it's a chaotic world. When you move to higher levels, it becomes an orderly world. It becomes the normal way of doing things. So we are moving into a new concept of logic, and you already see this. You see fuzzy thinking and all this other stuff going on in computers. We are moving from a linear concept of reality to a non-linear one. We're moving from a new level of consciousness in how we think. We're changing the concept of what are our capabilities. We're realizing our potential. Basically, humans only realize about 20% of their physical and mental potential. So what we have to understand is you can get up to 100%. When you're fully conscious, you're 100%. So the process then is shifting toward what I like to call changing from being a planetary human, which is a limited conscious being who sees things in fragments. Basically attempts to take these fragments and put them together logically to make sense, and then uses that sense as a basis to conceive and conceptualize what's going on out there. What we need to do is understand that when you become fully conscious, you don't see things in fragments, you see the whole picture at once. So what you need to then do is break it up in your mind so that you can absorb it and then utilize it.
Talk about fragments and breaking up into our mind.
Yeah.
I'm realizing as we're having this conversation that every 30 seconds of what you say could be broken up and a full workshop be held on every 30 seconds of what you say. Because I'm realizing that I'm following a lot of what you're saying because I've been around this for so long, but also I've gotten to see so many of your videos where you actually do break this up. So I want to tell people that are trying to follow along, if you're not already, maybe some people are, but if you're trying to follow along, that Sheldan has videos that you could get, and tell them how they can get them so they learn more about the pieces that are missing from this conversation.
Okay. For those who want to get my videos, what you simply have to do is go to my website. And my website is simply, I'll say it real slow, www.paoweb.com. You go there and just look under what we call consciousness tools, and you'll be able to get orders of all our stuff, all our different videos. If you want to see the latest, we have an aspect of it called the update section. I do an update every week. And so at the top of it, Miles Simon, who's our webmaster, has brought the latest stuff just above where you would actually click onto where the update is. So you can then go to the website, go to either the Tools of Consciousness, order the products, or else go to the update.
Okay. Well, so we'll just touch on a couple more topics right now because there's just so much to cover. It'd be great to do a series with you someday, but you've got those out there already. All right. So you're saying there's going to be first contact, and it's going to be imminent.
Right.
However, imminent could mean days, weeks, months, maybe even years?
I'm hoping no more than sometime in this year. That's what I'm hoping.
Sometime in this year, 2010.
Yeah.
We're right now, is it still May? We're April.
We're in April. That's my hope.
Time is being warped right now. We're in April 2010. So sometime before the end of this year, 2010.
That's my hope that will happen.
Hope. Okay. And so it's interesting that you get into this period of time after contact has been made, and you're saying, first of all, a lot has to happen in this period. Right. The government has to change,
right.
And not just our government, but supposedly all the governments of the world. And you're not suggesting we do anything about that. It's just a normal process that's going to happen.
There's a group on this planet that's working very hard to do both legal and other means involved with monies, etc., to, you might say, cause the process of change to be accelerated. And so that's what's basically going on.
Now, if there's been a group of people that have benefited from things being this way, do you see that this change happening without a fight?
Well, that's what I call it the quiet revolution.
Quiet revolution. And is it because the energies are changing, and even this group of people, even their RNA and DNA is changing as well?
Well, this is a group of very wealthy, very powerful people, and also other groups and individuals around them, and also very powerful organizations that are working very hard right now to cause this change to occur. So they probably have maybe had that before because they've been involved since they were little with the whole concept of spiritual change and the shift according to the divine plan, and they know that this is the basic moment where it happens. What the basic dot in the time is, you can't give a day or a week or a month. I would love to, but you can't. It all depends on when all this energy comes together at the right time, and it happens.
Just like you received the download of the Syrian language, was it? Then people could receive a download of how to be a doctor, or how to be, maybe lawyer isn't a good example because things will shift the way we do things, and we won't need that kind of assistance. Or, so how to heal, how to build things, how to downloads.
Right.
All right. So it would make sense if we're only using 20% of our brain right now, that in that 80% might be secrets, or might be knowledge, or might be an ability to get information in a way that we haven't used before.
That's right.
Okay. All right. So that happens, and then after that period, something very exciting happens. We all go to a place at the center of our existing Earth,
right,
according to what you're getting,
right,
and that is Middle Earth, where it looks a lot like here.
Basically, pretty much a lot like here. The difference, of course, is when you have the sun up ahead, like up above our head, like we do now, you get this very clear light. When you have the inner sun of inner Earth, it's a little diffuse, so the shadows wouldn't be as clear. They'd be a little more fuzzy, but you would be getting the same kind of light.
So, according to what Sheldan is getting, our Earth is hollow within it, and it has a central sun, and it's constantly light.
It's glowing, right?
So there's no nighttime.
There's no nighttime.
So there are beings supposedly living there right now.
Right, there are beings living there right now. They live in things called crystal cities. So there's no problem about light, and in them they can completely create whatever kind of environment around them that they need.
And why are we going there? I mean, besides the fact that it exists, and that's a whole other conversation.
Right.
But we're trying to condense and follow a logic, if that's possible, because some of this is just outside of our normal way of thinking. But why are we going, and who is going?
Well, all of us are going to inner Earth to
change
into becoming fully conscious beings.
Billions of us.
Right, right.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because the surface area is getting ready to totally be shifted to a 5D reality, as inner Earth is basically a 5D reality as well. They're just setting up special sections for our change where we were affected by it.
So Earth as we know it will cease to exist, not because it's going to blow up and go away, but because there will be massive changes, and is that the apocalypse that we've been hearing about?
Well, it's an apocalypse for the planet, because when this thing happens, nobody can really live on top of this planet, because we have continents going up, we have mountains going up and down, we have rivers reappearing, we have lakes coming, and inland seas occurring. There's such a vast change in the planet, and also the various tectonic plates lock, the planet expands. So you might say what we would be seeing is unbelievable amounts of volcanism, unbelievable amounts of earthquakes, unbelievable amounts of tsunamis of unbelievable wave proportions. So it would be almost impossible for a human being, or just about any animal, to live on the top of this planet once this whole process happens, because it's supposed to happen very fast, in like a few days.
Now, is this something that's happened on the planet before? Because it sounds like, the Noah's Ark story.
Well, there used to be a thing above our heads called the firmament, and there were 2 layers of them. The second layer fell, and that's where you get the concept for what now is called the biblical flood. Okay. There was one before that. We basically were dropped from full to limited consciousness in Atlantis, roughly about 15 to 17,000 years ago, and about 13,000 years ago when Atlantis fell, we were the only people left on the surface of this planet, and so we were mostly amnesiac. So we needed somebody to help us out here so we could survive. And so that's when another group of beings came in, the so-called sky gods or Anunnaki, to basically control us for most of this 13 millennia period. So we're coming out of this whole history to a whole new reality. And that whole new reality is being fully conscious. And even though it sounded like a massive fairy tale, it isn't. There's all kinds of histories. If you look at geology about the fall of Atlantis, people talk all the time about what's going on. Well, the thing they told me was that this moon, we originally had 2 moons, one of this moon broke up, and that was what actually sunk Atlantis, the collision of this moon with what was left of the continent of Atlantis. As a result of that, you then ask, well, what evidence is there of this? And you have across North America a whole series of pockets all the way up past toward British Columbia, of what basically is the remnants of, looks like a huge meteorite came in and crashed. Well, I'm saying this wasn't a huge meteorite or asteroid. It was actually this moon breaking up and causing the disaster of Atlantis. And people say, well, Lemuria is a myth. Some of the leading geologists on this planet, and I've checked into it and looked it up and all that to confer this, have said that the possibilities of there being a place called Atlantis in the middle of the Pacific Ocean at some past time in our history is reality. And they put it at past 50,000 years. So it's roughly within the time frame that we're talking about with Atlantis. And then the Indian scientists, geologists, have discovered that there is a sunken continent between India and Madagascar, which they call Great Sri Lanka. And this, from the beliefs of a lot of them, from their background in Vedic histories and Vedic literature, they see this as the place where the Gita and a lot of Vedic literature actually took place. So what we have is scientific evidence beginning to grow that this is there. Also, since I kind of do the thing of looking up for oddball stuff, roughly about 12 years ago they began seeing the anchor points around the moon, which would be the anchor points for putting these two moon systems together. And then I can tell you that the present moon is an artificial moon that isn't from here. And so we can get into the whole concept of that.
Oh my goodness. Like they wouldn't grabbed it and said they need a moon over here?
Originally there was a huge water planet. And this huge water planet existed between Mars and Jupiter. It's the asteroid belt today. It had 5 satellites. 4 were natural, 1 wasn't. The outermost moon was thrown into an orbit between Mars and the Earth, and eventually was seized, and it was used to maintain the balance when the first moon was used to destroy Lemuria. So you have here a whole what seems like crazy history, but there is stuff out there that's going on. And of course, when the astronauts went to the moon, they discovered that at one time the moon had actual life. There were fossils on the moon. So the moon always wasn't this funny-looking pockmarked place. It was actually something quite different.
You know, you said it yourself, a crazy history. That's what it sounds like.
Well,
I have to say, though it may sound like that, I have to wonder if it's any crazier than the history that I've been brought up with.
Right.
And so I wonder now if which obviously is the real history, and if even this is the real, I mean, is this just history as much as we can understand it, or is this basically it?
Well, what we're talking about is the real history. The history that you learn in the books is basically manipulated history. As Herodotus said, the victors write the history. That basically has been what has been happening here. There's a whole different suppressed history, which once it's thoroughly allowed out the door, people will get a whole different concept of who, what they are. And there's also a lot of people who are involved in genetics who are beginning to realize that the uniqueness of humanity makes it really apart from this planet, and that really our origins are extraterrestrial. That we are really, if you want to see an extraterrestrial, go in the bathroom wherever there's a mirror, and there you are.
Me? Okay, me too. Okay, that's fine. I'm not afraid. It's actually very exciting, and you know, again, we could talk literally for hours, because I've listened to you for hours, and it just is it's mind-blowing, actually, is what it is. And I think, you know, there was a time when Galileo was thought to be a heretic and a crazy man and all that, and we say on this planet, we wouldn't do that. We wouldn't kill somebody for thinking differently, because we look at it and say, oh, of course he was right. Of course the Earth wasn't the center of the universe, or of course the Earth was round but how about this information? I mean, are we saying, oh, of course? Are we going to wait until it all happens to believe it, or are we going to close our minds to it? This is the question that I'm having within myself. It's easy to say in hindsight, oh, look at those foolish people that didn't believe Galileo or Columbus or whomever. And yet we're doing that every day. And here is a point where we have to make that decision upon ourselves. And actually, if it's going to happen anyway, so there are the believers and then there are the non-believers, but the non-believers are going to end up the same place where the believers are. What do the believers do except try and get this information out there?
Just get the information out. You know, they usually say there's this 4-step process of theories that are coming out. The first process is, this guy is totally crazy. An example of that is drifting continents. The guy who was the head of the whole process of creating different continents, this Austrian guy, he was completely laughed out of geology. He couldn't get a job. Then there's the second stage, which is maybe there's something to this. And then there's the third stage, which simply says, I think this might be right. And the fourth stage is, I knew it all along.
Right. Well, very good. Okay, so if all of this is happening naturally, what are we supposed to do?
Understand the process that we've been talking about, get information on it, and learn about it, and then just be one with it. Accept it. Be able to look around and not see the world strictly as a world that is not changing, but see it as a world that's changing. And once you open your mind, you will see vast amounts of parts of this planet changing. You'll see how the atmosphere is really changing, how the planet's changing, how the whole process of who and what we are is changing.
The clues are there, in other words.
They're there. We have changing DNA. We have all these incredible crystal kids. We have all this incredible new technology coming online. You see that there has to be a shift. And then you look at the planet. We're in the largest extinction level since the late Permian. So what we have to say to ourselves is, either this system is dying or we are about to shift, because that was the shift between basically reptiles and fishes and amphibians to dinosaurs. So what we have to understand is, and that went on for, you know, over 200 million years, but what is happening here is we are going through a shift. It's not an extinction. It's basically a concept going on in the world right now that says we're in the midst of a great shift. And so the world is adopting to it and changing. A lot of creatures are changing. I don't really believe the polar bear would go extinct when he loses his ice. He will discover a way to adjust. So the process is, we are in the midst of a great change. It's happening to animals. It's happening to all forms of nature, plants, oceans. Oceans are changing as well. So what we have to then look at is, who are we? What are we about? And see that we are also changing. So we are in the midst of a world that is in a great change. It's changing on an individual level. It's changing on a civilization level. It's changing on the level of the planet. And what the extraterrestrials are about is to mentor all of this, to help us through this process. So they're here not to cause massive disasters or all these crazy things you see in these science fiction stories. What we're here to see is a change in who and what we are, to full consciousness. We're meeting with full conscious beings, and so what you need to do is look inside, look into your heart energy, feel the change, and just accept it. Don't fight it. Don't say, oh, this sounds crazy. Know it. That's why people naturally, when they're asked about this, say something incredibly wonderful is about to happen. So just know that incredibly well happened. These are an examples of what is happening, and allow you to accept it in that way, and just use your heart energy, your intuitive energies to measure it. Don't come from the head, because the head energy is what's being changed right now. We're going to change to an energy where the heart leads the head, not the head leads the heart. We're changing all of that very shortly.
Well, you know, actually, this is so appropriate for what Life Changes is really all about. Life Changes with Filippo, we talk about the changes that are going on, and not to fight them, and some we need to say allow, some we need to augment, but we're part of this process.
Right.
And here's an example: is we can allow how do we put this, like evil changes to precipitate more, or we can allow the benevolent changes to happen more quickly, right?
Right, exactly.
If we're malleable that way, then we can choose one way or another. So being aware of the different changes and being aware of what the possibilities are, and being open to the fact that life does change, and that change is a constant, instead of, oh, it's just going to be this way forever. And those who say it's going to be this way forever, or I want it to be this way forever, it's going to be harder for them, and it always is, because change is imminent, and is actually not just imminent, it's happening all the time.
Right, it's all around us right now. People would really look, they would see the reality that we exist in is not the same reality it was 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. We are changing everything around us. Creatures, the atmosphere, the climate, the way we are, everything is changing. Whether we say it's changing because of one thing or another doesn't matter. What matters is that this change is occurring. And as we begin to understand that, we have to then look into this whole process much more deeply and to see patterns that are developing. And as you see these patterns, it becomes eminent, it becomes obvious that we are indeed becoming a new type of being, this fully conscious being I'm talking about, and we are also becoming, most importantly, a part of how this planet operates. We are helping to sustain it. We move from people that kind of willy-nilly mess up our planet on its surface to people that understand deeply what this living being is about and how the process of change within her is occurring, and how we can best use our own energies and abilities to bring that energy into a sustainable level to keep the planet changed at its maximum level where it wants to go and allow it therefore to be there. So we then move from being people who are kind of here not really knowing what we're doing, making up examples and ideas of what that is, to people who know who they are, who are using that vast, incredible talent together and creatively to solve problems, to make and sustain our planet at its maximum level, which it'll be when it returns to its 5D reality.
Wow. If that's not a mouthful or a mindful. You know, I actually have to say this, since you're holding your hands up and talking with your hands, people are going to ask, what is he holding in his hands?
Right.
And they're Dorothy Lee Donohue's star rods, which she makes, but are something that's been used for, I mean, since the Egyptian times or something, right? So that's what he's holding in his hand.
So
and
now you know.
now you know. Although it could be anything that you're holding in your hand, because you are involved with so many things.
Right.
We're drawing to a close, unfortunately, for this particular conversation, but I know you do workshops where you give this kind of information and so much more, and you have videos and they're on the internet. So let's give your website again.
Okay. Okay, so the website, once again, for everybody is www.paoweb, that's P-A-O-W-E-B, one word, .com. Just go there. And as I said, check with our products, and you can find all the DVDs and other stuff that we have.
Now, you've encapsulated really well about change and about what we need to do. Is there anything, and this is a loaded question for you, I just know, because is there anything that you want to make sure that you say before we close today?
Just one thing. Stay confident, stay positive, be centered on the shift in energies, because energies are shifting every day, and use that shift as your awareness grows with it to grow and grow consciously to help create the new reality that is showing up around you. Be a part of the change, participate in it, and make it happen as wonderfully as a divine plan intends for it to happen.
And in essence, don't be afraid. And the interesting thing is that if a child were to be told that they were going to study calculus, or they had to figure out quantum physics or something, a child with the child of yesterday, today they can just download it, evidently. But that's difficult for them to accept or understand. But if we're going to be evolving into different kind of being, then the ability to handle that will be given to us, or we will evolve into it.
We will evolve.
So no need to be afraid.